Hi, my name is Doug Schneider. Welcome back to another episode of Real Hi-Fi. And in this one, I want to talk about MQA, the Master Quality Authenticated Encoding Format for digital files. And before you say, oh my God, another MQA video, haven't enough people done MQA videos already? Yes, they have. But I think I've earned the right to do at least one because in April 2016, I wrote an article called Questions about MQA on SoundStageHiFi.com. At that time, a number of audio writers were going crazy telling the world that MQA is going to revolutionize their listening. But I was looking at it and thinking to myself, have any of you guys really done the due diligence and checked it out? Are the claims true? Now, don't worry, I'm not going to talk about all that I wrote about in that article or all about what reviewers were writing back then. Instead, I want to use this video to talk about the two things I zeroed in on that really bugged me back then and still bug me today. One of the things that bugged me back then is that it was being promoted as a lossless music format. Now, that's since been refined to be perceptually lossless, which I guess means you can't tell what data they're throwing out, but I think that's kind of a BS term because you could argue that an MP3 file, which is definitely lossy, is perceptually lossless if somebody can't tell the difference between it and a higher resolution music file. But this use of the word lossless really bugged me, even if you want to tack another word on, because in the world of data compression, which is what the MQA process is about, lossless has a strict and non-negotiable definition. And it basically means you take a data file, you compress it, you uncompress it, and it's bit for bit identical before and after. But all someone had to do was look at the MQA patents, which were online at the time, to see that the process of encoding wasn't lossless. A file that went through encoding was not bit for bit identical before and after. And that may be fine, but what really bothered me is why use the term lossless to begin with? Was it to lead consumers into believing that it was a true lossless format? Because it's not. But the whole lossless thing didn't bother me the most. What bothered me the most was the company's inability or complete lack of wanting to back up their claims. And when you're introducing a new technology, backing up your claims is something you're going to be asked to do, especially when you have an online world today where you have people who will ask questions and you better have answers to them. The claim that I wanted to see backed up had to do with the company's deblurring technology, which, from reading what MQA says, has to do with artifacts that are introduced when recordings are converted from analog to digital. And this would affect mainly older recordings such as this Van Morrison one. The claim is that the MQA encoding and decoding process undoes some of the bad things those old analog to digital converters did to the recordings and gives you increased spatial information and greater timing accuracy. Now, that claim of increased spatial information and timing accuracy really set those reviewers who were promoting MQA frothing at the mouth because they were saying they were hearing things in recordings that they had never heard before. Deeper sound stages, more image specificity. The problem was I was looking at the recordings they were listening to and there didn't appear to be any A-B comparisons done. And I remember being at a demo of MQA in Munich, and all the MQA representatives did was play a single track, an MQA track, and not compare it to any other track, even when they were asked to compare it to other tracks. And that's a real problem. You don't know if a technology is doing something unless you have something to compare it to. To that point about comparison material, some people have pointed out, well, you could take a CD release and compare it to the MQA release. And I think that's something that some of those reviewers really trumpeting the technology 5 or 6 years ago fell prey to. You can't really do that. It's not apples to apples because you don't know what went into the mastering of that CD versus the MQA release. Were other things done? And then I heard a recording engineer who seemed to have MQA's back say, well, maybe they can't release these comparison recordings because they'd be violating copyright, having this music out there freely to compare. Well, maybe that's true, but how about try this? I don't know if you've seen the movie Hired Gun, but you can hire great studio musicians. You can record your own material, own copyright to it, get one of those analog to digital converters that supposedly blurs the recording, have your blurred recording, have your de-blurred version, release that to consumers so they can compare. But of course, I never saw anything like that done. So in wrapping up, the way the term lossless was used to lead people to think a certain way, and also the inability to back up claims, in particular the de-blurring process, are what put me off from MQA at the beginning and still puts me off today. That said, I don't want to come across as some MQA hater the way some people are. I've listened to numerous MQA files and they can sound bad, good, or great depending on the recording mostly. Likewise, though, I don't believe the MQA claims that have been made. And that's kind of corroborated by a study McGill did a few years ago. Now, McGill is a research university. They have a music program, and they took MQA files and compared them against their own high-resolution files. And I guess they did the processing themselves. So it was a good apples-to-apples comparison. And the outcome was, even among their discriminating listeners, was they couldn't tell the difference reliably between MQA and the higher resolution files, which in ways speaks well for MQA in that it doesn't damage the files in a negative way. On the flip side, the benefits that they claimed and those reviewers who were trumpeting the technology were claiming didn't come through. And I think this should be a cautionary tale for companies and for consumers. This isn't the 60s, 70s, and 80s anymore, even the 90s. We're all online today, people around the world communicating, and if a company comes out with a technology and makes bold claims about it, they better be ready to back those claims up, or somebody's going to be calling them out. Thank you for watching.